Good evening. I'm Cedric Fisher, and welcome to Press Play. For those of you who are familiar with Press Play, we are a broadcast show from the Black Video News Network. We're currently here at the Black Book Studios in San Antonio, Texas. You could find us online at blackvideonews.com. Our Facebook page is Black Book Studios. Please like our page. And you could find all of these episodes, including the special episode we're doing today, on YouTube at Black Video Network, all one word, no spaces in the search bar. Just look for the show and press play. Okay, we're back for another round of COVID. Before we talk about that, let's applaud the candidates who were elected in the runoff this week. We had a big election and a voter turnout that really broke some numbers. I'm understanding by a group called Move Texas, which is a voter registration group, that we had the largest voter turnout in a decade here in Central Texas and probably the entire state of Texas. So it was a good turnout. Glad to know that we all got out and got to vote, and hopefully your candidate won. So let's talk about COVID. It's currently taken over the country by storm again. I don't know if our national leadership is really taking it seriously. It's unfortunate because the whole topic now is becoming political. You got some folks in one particular party that seem to believe they can't get it or it's not for them, and they sort of rebel and resist all the national medical experts' suggestions and mandates for how to prevent and protect ourselves. The other group, of course, is loading up and self-distancing and double mask and everything else to make sure that we try and keep these numbers under management. So we, of course, if you've been following Press Play for the past month or so, we've been talking about COVID and all the ways that we can manage our ways through this. I want to recommend us, African Americans, do our part in social distancing, wearing your mask, making sure that you protect yourselves. If you guys can notice right here in the studio, I'm going to bring my guest on in a second here. I've got a plexiglass plate. We call this the social distancer, if you can kind of see that. And that sort of, puts a little healthy distance between myself and the guest to make sure we keep each other healthy. So COVID-19, let's talk about how we as a community can manage through this. Now, they got vaccines and stuff that they're working on, but let me recommend a couple of websites first. If you guys are familiar with the National Medical Association, those are the historically and oldest grouping of African American doctors. Listen to what they're saying, do your research. These folks know us. They have the cultural competence to understand what to prescribe and how to tell us and suggest we manage through it. And then another website is called blackdoctors.org. Black Doctor, I think there's no S on the end of that, guys. Check it out, make sure it's either Black Doctor or blackdoctors.org. Another great site which really talks about lifestyle for managing through any kind of a medical condition. Of course, we are disproportionately impacted by COVID. A lot of the fatalities have been folks of people of color, not just black people, but brown people in general. But that includes us. And if you guys have done the research and studied COVID, you know that we are predisposed for COVID based on some pre-existing conditions. One of those happens to be diabetes, and another is hypertension or heart disease. So, as my grandfather used to always say, African Americans dig our graves with our teeth. We kill ourselves at the dining room table. And if we only ate better, we may see a better quality of life. With that, we're going to talk today about the best cure being prevention. And if we can do better with our nutrition, we may have a better shot at getting through COVID. I'm sure you heard that before, but we're going to really dissect it today with a subject matter expert who has a history and background of getting through and managing through almost overcoming certain diseases, who has had a better quality of life, and now he's in a position where he can really kind of educate and train others on how to manage their life. I'd like to bring on the show right now, introduce you to Mr. Paul Silva. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you.
Good to see you. And Paul's background is, he is a photographer, an outstanding photographer from New York, by the way, from Long Island, New York. He's in San Antonio visiting his relatives. He's also a Microsoft certified trainer.
Yes, sir.
Engineer by profession. He's a comedian and also a keto food lifestyle aficionado. Does that sound good?
Correct.
All right. Welcome to the show, Paul. Why don't you start by just sharing with all of our viewers, tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from and that sort of stuff.
Okay, I'm originally from New York. Grew up in Long Island, New York, close to the city. And when I became an older teenager, I joined the Navy and got into the medical field there. And after I got out of the Navy in the early 80s, it was very difficult to find work in New York State in the medical field for me. So eventually settled on becoming a rock star.
Rock star.
A rock star, musician, singer, guitarist, and that turned into rock star plus comedy.
Okay. Rock star. Didn't see that on the background description. Good. Okay.
So, and that was good. I wasn't making a lot of money, but it was enough to raise my son. And I was a single dad, so I raised my son alone. And when my son turned 19, he said, "Dad, what are we going to do for college?" And I said, "Son, I was kind of counting on your grades."
Scholarship.
Yeah.
Okay. Academic scholarship.
Right.
Sure.
And that didn't quite work out. So he came up with a plan for me. And that was that I was going to take out this huge big loan and go to school to become an IT professional, since I was kind of handy with computers at the time.
Okay.
And I did that. I committed to it, but the deal was that he would commit to it as well.
Okay.
I went through all it. I got certified, and he backed out.
Okay. So
But I didn't count on liking it so much.
he didn't go that route.
He didn't go that route.
Okay.
I didn't get. He is currently a first responder, however,
Nice.
on Long Island, New York.
Appreciate his service.
And
Fantastic.
for me, I didn't count on liking IT so much, and I wanted more training. But musicians at that time did make a lot of money. They still don't.
Okay.
So unless you make it really, really big. So what I determined was that by becoming a trainer, I have access to all the training that I want. I can teach that which I'm an expert at, while I continue to expand my knowledge base. And I did that for the past 20 years.
20 years as a Microsoft certified trainer.
Microsoft certified trainer,
Okay.
certified in every operating system Microsoft has put out since the year 1998.
Wow.
And that requires constant testing, constant updating of your knowledge base.
Yeah.
And at an instructor level, you have to really know your stuff. Because I do continue to teach. I have a class online this coming week. It's a week-long class.
Okay.
So with that, it's time to wind down. I've been traveling all around the world with Microsoft. My biggest client right now is the Department of Defense, so I'm serving in
DoD.
another way. I'm serving by teaching our service people how to maintain their systems, how to not get hacked, how to protect the military systems. So I've been to Korea and Kuwait and Okinawa and all places. I've been to Fort Sam Houston right here in San Antonio a few times to teach there.
Outstanding. So that's your current line of work.
That's my current line of work.
Yeah.
And as I wind down from all that traveling, I think I'm going to go back into the creative side, and that's why the photography.
Okay.
And the problem with what I did was all the stress of traveling, the poor eating. I got gargantuan. I was really, really sickly. I wound up contracting diabetes, heart disease. I've had 2 open heart surgeries.
Two okay.
Open heart surgeries.
Wow.
And a couple of bypasses as well as aortic valve replacements. But, I'm here for a reason. I'm still here.
Still standing.
I'm
okay.
still here, and I'm here to serve.
Okay, that's fantastic. So, 2 open heart surgeries. Was it heart disease or?
Heart disease, cardiovascular disease, hypertension,
Okay.
and diabetes and metabolic syndromes, just all part of the same inflammation, all part of the same inflammatory disease that causes all of it. The same base disease causes all of it, and which way it goes is up to the individual body.
Okay. So what's your assessment of how you got those, Paul? Was it just genetic or bad food choices?
Part of it can be genetic. Part of it can be genetic. If you're predisposed to have a weakness in a certain area due to your genetic makeup, doesn't mean you're going to get sick. Doesn't mean you're going to have diabetes. It doesn't mean that you're going to have cardiovascular disease. But what it does mean is you have to be more careful about your diet and how you take care of your body. We have to be more ancestral in the way we treat our bodies. And with society, the way it's changed, especially since the 1970s, it's more immediate gratification. Nothing's really long term. I want it now. I want it delivered tomorrow. And with that, you make certain concessions, and many times those concessions are with your health.
Okay. We tend to not want to start at the food table when we're thinking about good health. We spend a lot more time on the post end of it, right? With
Yes.
medications and that sort of thing. But the best cure is prevention. So
Absolutely.
So you were able to overcome major surgeries. And I think you mentioned that you were diabetic once upon a time.
Yes.
And overcame that.
Overcame that. 2 years now, I haven't touched an insulin needle.
Wow.
And I was taking 3 high doses a day and a high dose at night to try to manage my blood sugars. They were through the roof. I had a 50-inch waist at that time. And that was one of the stimuluses for me. I went to a wedding in New Orleans with my wife, and
Couldn't get your collar.
I couldn't get my collar closed.
Oh, okay.
I needed to go out and buy a new shirt. I couldn't close my pants. I had a 50-inch waist. Now, a lot of medical sources and nutritional sources will tell you that anything over 40, you're at risk for a heart attack, you're at risk for cardiovascular disease. You probably already do have metabolic syndrome and either pre-diabetes or diabetic at that particular point. And that was the last straw, as they say, for me. I had to find something that worked, but I was so afraid. I've tried everything. I failed at everything.
So you tried some of the popular diets?
Yes.
Okay.
I've tried a lot of the Weight Watchers, and I ordered meals that came pre-prepared and portion controlled, and none of that worked for me. It worked at a limited level.
Okay.
It worked at a limited level, and even in hospitals, they don't feed you the way they need to feed you. How do you take a diabetic who's in the hospital and feed him sugar? Because you give them insulin ahead of time. But why give the insulin if you're going to give him sugar? Why not just give him sugar?
Give him straight sugar.
Don't give him the sugar.
Yeah.
So he doesn't need the insulin. But that we have a food industry and drug industry ecosystem that needs to be supported. I haven't, except for my regular yearly workup to see where I am and set my goals with my doctor, I haven't been to the doctor in a sick state in over 2 years.
That's fantastic. So, Paul, how old were you when you were going through some of these major health issues?
59 when I started changing.
Okay.
So you can change at any time.
Okay. So I'd say between your 40s and 50s is when all the trouble was happening.
It's all the traveling and the eating poorly, the eating at airports, just eating at any time of the day or night, and just putting stuff in my mouth. Some of the popular junk foods, they're only going to make a profit if they can make it cheap.
Okay.
They can make it cheap when they can put sugar in it.
Interesting. And at its max, how many meds a day were you taking, including the insulin?
Insulin, I was taking blood pressure medications. I was taking cholesterol reducing medications. I was taking an aspirin, which is typical for thinning your blood so that you don't have another heart attack. I was taking all kinds of controlling medications, which I managed to take myself off of after 3 weeks of deciding to change my lifestyle.
You managed to take yourself off of
all medications.
What's that mean? You just walked away from the medications?
I didn't need them anymore.
The doctors told you this, or you?
I did it on myself, but I checked with my doctor. I checked with my doctor on a regular monthly because it was only 3 weeks.
Okay.
It was only 3 weeks. Well, my doctor saw my results over those 3-4 weeks. He was amazed. He was amazed. And he actually, my doctor, changed the way he started treating his patients based on my data. And he's gotten more and more successful at treating his patients properly. Rather than following old, tired ways, he started to change into real studies, evidence-based medicine, rather than just dictated medicine.
Okay.
Many hospitals have policies. When you have this, you do that.
Yeah.
When you have this, you give them that. I say, don't take any lotion, potion, powder, or pill. You don't need to add anything to get better. You need to subtract things.
Lotion, potion, powder, or pill. That's a good one.
Because
Okay.
that's the quick fix, right? We're all after that quick fix, that instant gratification.
Very interesting. That's good, Paul. So you came up with a new relationship with food.
Absolutely.
And you chose a lifestyle, I won't call it a diet, very careful not to call it a diet, called keto. Is that how it's pronounced?
Keto.
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 So define that and describe what that is for us.
Okay, so basically our bodies are programmed, our DNA is programmed to process foods in certain orders. The first thing to get processed, if you consume it, are going to be alcohols. So if you take a shot of gin or something, that gets processed for energy first.
Okay.
The second thing to be processed is glucose. So glucose comes from carbohydrates. This is anything that grows in the ground will produce blood glucose. That's your blood sugar, and that's anything that grows in the ground.
Okay.
Anything. Some have higher levels, some not so bad levels.
So you're talking fruits, vegetables?
I'm talking fruits and vegetables.
Nuts?
Yes.
Okay.
Nuts,
Okay.
right.
Sure.
Those are all carbohydrates, but some nuts, for instance, have a very, very high fat content, and those are really, really good for you. Some fruit. Now I'm going to say this word, and you're all going to think it's a vegetable. An avocado is a fruit.
Okay.
And it's got a very, very high fat content.
Just not-
so healthy.
Just not
for you.
sweet.
It's just not sweet.
Okay. Interesting.
Some fruits are not real. For instance, the bananas that we eat today, those are genetically modified by man.
Really?
Yes.
So we were always taught and shown that they come off a banana tree.
Right, but the tree has been genetically modified to produce a certain fruit in certain volumes for profit, with a certain amount of sweetness and taste,
Wow.
again for profit, because we are human beings are addicted to that sweet, unless you overcome the addiction. That sense of sweet, and that sense of sweet is what we'll bury ourselves with if we don't take care of our bodies.
So are bananas good for you or not so good?
They're not so good for you.
Ooh.
Oh, they taste great. I know. I get
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
I get it.
That's a tough one, Paul.
That's a real tough one. I
Yeah.
haven't had a banana in over 2 years.
Okay.
I like banana flavor, so I can flavor things with banana extract. It's still real banana. It's just that flavor from the banana. So
Interesting.
I can, and I don't deny myself certain treats, but I just make sure that they're healthy treats.
Okay. Sorry to break your train of thought. You were talking about, so anything that grows out of the ground
Is a carbohydrate
Is a carbo.
and will turn into glucose in your bloodstream.
Okay. Interesting.
When glucose is in your bloodstream, your pancreas senses there's glucose in the bloodstream. Let's send out some insulin, and it releases insulin. This is a type 2 diabetic with working beta cells. Will send out insulin so that insulin can do one of two jobs. It has two jobs. It basically opens the door to a cell so that the glucose can come in and feed the cell. Now, if that door is locked from the inside, which can happen, that's called insulin resistance, and that is the beginning of diabetes. When the cell says, no more, no more, no mas, then no matter what you do, you can't open that door. The blood is now full of sugar and insulin, and that's where the second job of insulin occurs. The insulin, if it cannot go into the cell for food, gets stored as body fat. Normal body fat cells are called adipose cells, but even they get full and they shut the door. So now what is the insulin going to do with all this glucose? Well, it's going to start to line the blood vessels. That's how you get arteriosclerosis. That's how you get cardiovascular disease. That's how you get clogged arteries. Because we're starting to line now our blood vessels with fat. We're going to convert the glucose into fat and store it somewhere in the body.
So is that called cholesterol?
Yeah, it turns it into fat and as cholesterol.
Okay.
Cholesterol is fat.
Cholesterol. Okay.
Cholesterol is fat. And not all cholesterol is bad. And not all bad cholesterol is bad cholesterol. There are different, if you look at it scientifically, everything has its purpose.
Okay.
Our bodies are very, very good at doing what it does. And if you lower your cholesterol too much, even your bad cholesterol, you could be denying your body the right hormonal process. For instance, LDL, which everyone says is the bad cholesterol, without LDL cholesterol, you're going to have gonadal problems. Low testosterone, low estrogen, and you're going to maybe experience menopause a little bit earlier. It all depends on the body and how it's reacting to the levels of nutrients in your body. And this is all caused by carbohydrates. So there are certain carbohydrates that you should avoid at all costs. And some that are okay. You can't avoid it all. I can't say that I'm 100% carbohydrate free.
Yeah. Give us a couple of them that we should avoid at all costs.
Well, sugar is the number one.
Sugar, okay.
Sugar is the number one.
We know that.
Rice. Yeah. That's a hard one for some cultures. Wheat. That's another hard one for some cultures because from wheat comes bread. From wheat comes spaghetti and pasta.
Yeah, cereal.
And grains, corn. You know, they here in Texas is cattle country, right? Here in Texas, you get the biggest amount of revenue the heavier the cow is. So right before they go to market with a cow, they need to fatten it up. And what do they fatten it up with? Corn and other grains. So if corn and other grains fatten up a cow, what do you think it'll do to you?
Interesting. Corn's a big staple in our diets.
It is.
Okay. So keto, let me get that right. Keto, does it eliminate some of the foods you just mentioned, or?
Well, keto is not a food. Keto is a process that happens in your body in the absence of carbohydrates and glucose. If you eat carbohydrates, your blood sugar will go up and your insulin is going to try to push it inside of the cells. When the cells reject it, you're diabetic. And what the doctors generally do is they worry about the high blood sugar, so they give you more insulin, so it forces it into the cell. Which then tells the cell responds by closing even more doors. In the meantime, no glucose is getting into the cell. So it can't go through the process of changing the glucose into cellular energy. And this is all types of cells. This is your muscle cells. This is every cell in your body. Every single cell in your body. Now it's hungry. So it sends a message to the brain that says, eat. Eat, I'm hungry, I need fuel. And if we eat more carbohydrates, we raise our sugar more, push out more insulin, and we're still blocking that insulin, the cell still goes hungry.
Interesting.
And sending a message to eat more. This is typically why some meals, when you go to a fast food restaurant and you eat certain types of meals, you're happy for about 2 hours and then you're hungry again. Because the cells are resisting the insulin, which means that glucose is not getting in, the cell's going hungry and saying, eat. Now, ketones, they're an alternative fuel. Oh, we've heard of gasoline, right? This would be more like the ethanol of the body. And we have ketones already, but ketones are only really made in the absence of glucose. Ketone diets don't work, or lifestyles don't work if you're eating sugar or carbohydrates, high glycemic carbohydrates. So what happens is the bloodstream says, okay, so no sugar, cells say, I'm hungry, and you just have to pause that for a second and let it go. Let it go for a little while. Continue to eat fats and proteins. Then magically around day 4 of not having any carbohydrates or very, very low carbohydrates, your brain goes, wow, you know what? I was designed to consume ketones for fuel as well. I don't have to fuel on glucose. I can fuel on ketones. So what is a ketone? In the absence of glucose, the free fatty acids from the food that you ate goes to the liver, and the liver breaks down the free fatty acids into 3 particular ketone bodies. Beta hydroxybutyrate, spell that one.
Okay. It's a mouthful.
Acetoacetate and acetone. Now, one of them we can't use. That's the acetone. The acetone goes into your bloodstream, gets filtered out through the liver and eliminated, or the particles are so small they also get breathed out. They go to your lungs and then you breathe them out.
Interesting.
This is why sometimes the newcomers to this lifestyle have somewhat of a little bit bad breath, because you're actually getting rid of those acetone molecules through your lungs. But the other 2 ketones go directly into your bloodstream. They don't need the insulin to go into the cell. Cell hungrily takes them in and fuels on the ketone bodies. So those ketone bodies come from fat.
Hold that thought, Paul. We're going to take a quick break here and hear a commercial from one of our sponsors. We're with Paul Silva on Press Play. We'll be right back.
Hello, this is Cornell with Frost Bank.
Hi there, this is Terry with Frost.
Good evening, this is Franklin. This is Robert with Frost.
Hello, this is Rosemary with Frost Bank.
One, six, or a dozen trees. No job is too big or too small. Booker's Tree Services is a certified arborist and state licensed company. On the ground or in the air, we are here to take care of all your tree needs, from stump grinding, tree pruning, tree trimming, tree removal, and much more. Call the professionals to help manage your commercial or residential needs. Don't let your trees make you nervous. Call for a free estimate today at Booker Tree Service, 210-657-8085.
One in three adults has prediabetes. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Because of you, I feel not alone in this world. And you let me know that it only takes one person to make you feel wanted.
One in three adults has prediabetes. That means it could be you, your favorite brother, your other brother. Yes. You, your football buddy, your football buddy. You, your plumber.
Breathe right into your foot.
Your plumber's masseuse.
Yes.
You, your dog walker, your cat jogger. With early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Does your life matter? Education, health, and finance can determine your future and explain your past. Pick up the latest edition of Black Life Texas Magazine, a monthly outlook on life with an African American focus. Life is what you make it, so live it in the black.
Welcome back to Press Play. I'm Cedric Fisher, and we're with Paul Silva today. We are talking about the immune system and another way of managing through COVID-19. The best cure being prevention. We're talking about Paul's ability and experience overcoming both diabetes and hypertension, and his new relationship with food. Welcome back, Paul.
Thank you.
So let's talk about the Keto Lifestyle. And before we left, you were discussing carbohydrates. Now, how about proteins and fats? Let's talk about that.
Well, ketones come from fats. And you have to be a little bit careful with anything you eat, because not all fats are good fats. For instance, canola oil. Everyone says, oh, that's a great fat for you. It's actually man-made.
Canola oil.
Canola oil. It's canola stands for Canada oil. It was made in a laboratory. It's actually processed rapeseed, and they process it, they crush it, and they boil it, and they just really process the heck out of it. And for me, I like to eat whole, real foods. I'm very much afraid of processed food because, and I apologize to some of the industry out there, but sorry, not sorry. My maker makes the food that I eat, not man. And I will eat whole, real foods, not man-made foods.
So canola oil is not good for us.
Not good for you.
Interesting.
And vegetable oils are generally not good for you.
Yeah.
Now, the oils that are good for you are olive oil.
Olive oil. Okay.
Avocado oil. Coconut oil.
Coconut oil.
Now, coconut oil is a very good staple of the ketogenic lifestyle because you can cook with it and so much you can do with it, but it also turns into ketones very, very quickly, which fuel your body.
Ketones are fat.
No.
No.
No, they're created by the body from fat.
Okay.
It's processed by your liver.
Okay.
It's a natural process. When there's no glucose to feed on, the liver will take fat. And it doesn't matter where that fat comes from. It could be dietary fat, or it could be fat on your arms, your booty, and your belly.
Okay.
So overweight people and obese people have found that they can lose many, many pounds by a process called autophagy. It's a Greek word, auto, self, phage, meaning eat. So we're going to eat our own fat and get fuel from that.
Okay.
That's how you burn fat, by stopping the sugar and switching to the alternative fuel, which the heart loves the alternative fuel. The brain loves the alternative fuel. Ketones were experimented in the 1920s as a treatment for epilepsy. It's also currently being used as treatment for dementia and Alzheimer's.
Interesting.
So there's a lot of credibility now, and even more. Dr. Eric Westman of Duke University has an entire keto program at the college. Dr. Ken Berry, he's in Nashville, Tennessee. He has a whole ketogenic practice, and he wrote a book called Lies My Doctor Told Me. Not that they intentionally mean to lie to you, it's just meant that they've been taught something that is clinically wrong.
So why haven't we heard a lot about ketones?
We haven't heard a lot about it because of another environmental hazard that we encounter, and that's the food industry and their food industry advertising.
Environmental hazard.
That's an environmental hazard.
Okay, Paul.
It's all around you in the environment, right? They're saying, eat this food, it's great. Look at all these happy, thin people eating burgers and the bread and the pasta. And look at all these happy people. Don't you want to be happy too? And then you fall for these brands that just continue to fill you up with toxins and make you sick. You know, when your body's a great, great healing machine. It's awesome at healing. However, if you're feeding it toxins, it has to deal with the toxins before it can digest, before it can heal you. So there's an order to the way your body reacts to what you eat.
Okay. Offline here, you were telling me about a bear hibernating in ketones. Tell us that story.
Well, we all know the stories of a bear hibernates over the winter. He sleeps all winter. How do you think he survives without eating? How does a bear survive? Well, he eats his own body fat. He consumes it internally.
Before hibernation. Before he hibernates.
Before hibernation, he fattens up.
Fattens up, okay.
And then during hibernation, his body feeds on ketones produced by its body to feed him all winter long.
How about that?
It's a very natural way of living. Very natural. Babies are born ketogenic. It's not until we introduce the carbohydrates that are in whole milk or even worse, 2%, or even worse, 1%. Because if they take away the fat, they're raising the carbohydrate level. The lactose is the sugar. So with the high sugars, and then we start giving them grain, cereal, before we give them meat. Again, the grain is what they use to fatten up cows. You're going to get a fattened up baby. And cow's milk is awesome. It's awesome for baby cows.
Okay. Is milk a part of the, or is dairy a part of the
We can
keto
have
diet?
dairy.
Yeah.
So I was asked, well, what's a typical ketogenic diet?
Yeah, what's a typical breakfast? Let's start with breakfast.
Breakfast. And they say it's the most important meal of the day, right? It doesn't have, first of all, breakfast does not have to occur at the beginning of the day. The longer, if you're not hungry, don't eat. That's the number one rule. Don't eat because it's time to eat. Eat because you feel hungry.
So if you're not hungry.
Don't eat.
Interesting.
So breakfast, for me, sometimes is 11, 12 a.m. 12 noon. 11 a.m., 12 noon sometimes. But what do I eat? Culturally, I'm allowed to eat bacon, so I eat bacon. I eat eggs. Eggs are just about the perfect food. It's got the right balance of everything. The fats, the proteins, and the carbohydrates.
Okay. But the bacon's not bad for you.
The bacon is not bad for you.
Red meat, sodium, no.
I'm sorry? Red meat, sodium, those are all scare tactics so that you eat more sugar.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay, so, yeah, red meat, and they say red meat and cholesterol and all that. It's, if you look at the real studies, human-based studies, not mice, human studies, you'll find that the results are much better on fat-based diets, where 70+% of your intake is from fat. 15% or so is from protein. You need the fat for the free fatty acids. You need the protein to build the body, so that you don't start consuming proteins from your body. You need to replenish the proteins.
The proteins, okay.
And that's where the red meat comes in, or the white meat. It could be chicken, it could be pork, it could be any kind of meal. Or breakfast could also be an avocado. Maybe for lunch, I'll have an avocado with butter. Milk.
Real butter.
Real butter. Not fake butter, no, never margarine. That's man-made. That's not nature-made.
You guys heard it.
Margarine is a trans fat. And if you do your research on trans fat, and they still sell them. They still sell it. Knowing that someone's going to buy it. They still sell trans fats. It's just amazing that we don't have better control over the food industry. We have a big lobby for the food industry, just like we had for tobacco. We have a huge lobby for food.
Yeah.
And we have to really get it under control. But there is some good news. This year, the Food and Drug Administration is changing its stance on fat. And the typical food pyramid that we're used to seeing, where all the carbohydrates on the bottom and the fats on the top, you eat the smallest here of fat, is going upside down.
Interesting. Okay. Breakfast. Bacon and eggs.
Bacon and eggs. Maybe an avocado.
Avocado.
That would be my biggest meal.
Okay.
Because that's what's going to fuel me all day long.
Juice. Coffee.
No. Coffee, yes.
Coffee?
Coffee is acceptable, except no sugar.
No sugar.
No sugar.
Cream?
Heavy cream.
Okay.
Or, this might sound weird, butter. Even better.
In the coffee?
In the coffee.
Okay.
How do you make
butter? It does
butter?
sound weird.
Do you know how to make butter?
I don't know how to make butter.
Okay, you take heavy cream, you put it in the jar, you shake it. Keep shaking. All of a sudden you feel a lump. Keep shaking it. Keep shaking it. Open it up, you've got butter.
Butter. Okay. How about lunch? What's good for lunch?
Okay, lunch could be an avocado.
Avocado. Okay.
It could be more bacon. It could be, you can do nuts with that. Spinach salad. Spinach salad with green, red, yellow peppers. Slice up an egg and put it in there.
Okay.
Apple cider vinegar and olive oil.
Cheese?
Cheese.
Okay.
Cheese is good.
It's good to know.
Cheese is good. The whole thing is you got to know how much you can tolerate of certain foods before your blood sugar goes up. Because cheese does have a little bit of carbohydrates. But if you are counting, you don't count calories. Calories don't matter. Your body doesn't know what a calorie is. It knows that you're feeding it carbohydrates. It knows that you're feeding it fat. It knows that you're feeding it protein. And it'll do the best it can with whatever you give it. And it does the same thing with toxins. If you give it toxins, it's going to try to metabolize the toxins and get rid of them before you can actually get nutrients out of any food. It doesn't know about calories. So you can have a 3, 4, even 5,000 calorie a day diet and still lose a lot of weight.
How about dinner, Paul?
Dinner,
What's a
sometimes
typical?
a steak,
Okay.
many times a steak. Sometimes that steak is wrapped in, yes, you guessed it, bacon.
Bacon.
Or chicken thighs.
Okay.
Or chicken legs. And the beauty of this is, and they charge more for a chicken breast than they do for the chicken thighs, only because of this high fat craze. Leave the skin on, folks. There's a lot of beautiful fat in there to be metabolized as energy. Sometimes I actually go to some of the stores and said, what do you do with your fat after you peel it off the chicken? Says, well, we throw it out. Says, can you save me a bag?
Oh, no kidding.
And I use it for making soup stock.
Okay.
Chicken soup stock, because the flavor is in the fat.
Who knew?
The flavor is in the fat. So you don't have to go out and buy the most expensive cut of meat. I eat ribeyes because it's got the highest fat content when I go to a restaurant.
Okay.
But one of the things that I always do, whatever restaurant I go to, I ask for the nutritional chart. I want to make sure that they don't add sugars or breads or anything that's going to raise my carbohydrate intake before I order, because I need to know
most of the
what
time
I'm
they
ordering.
do, right? At
Well,
restaurants.
many times they do.
Food's got to taste good, so.
It's got to taste good, and
Sure.
that's what they do. They add sweetness to make it taste good. So if I order chicken wings, I certainly say, can I have an order of chicken wings? And I say completely naked, meaning no batter and no breading. But I can have hot sauce, because as long as the hot sauce doesn't have any added sugars. So there's no, you have to know where you get your shortcuts. Doesn't mean that I do not eat bread. I can make my own bread out of coconut flour and almond flour. That's low glycemic, but really, after a short time, you just don't want it. You don't need it. But we do have our staple foods. Waffles.
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 Okay.
I don't do waffles. I do chaffles.
Chaffles.
Right.
Okay.
And it's very, very easy to make. Chaffles. Instead of making a wheat-based batter, I take an egg, a quarter cup of mozzarella cheese, grated, whip it up in a blender, and that's my batter that I use to
For
make
chaffles.
Chaffles or pancakes.
That's terrific, Paul. We got to stop here. One last question before we let our viewers go. How can they learn more about the keto lifestyle?
I recommend, since most of you are going to be watching this online on YouTube, do a search for Dr. Eric Westman from Duke University, Dr. Ken Berry from Nashville, Tennessee, and how I got introduced was Dr. Jason Fung, F-U-N-G. He is actually a kidney doctor out of Toronto who does speaking to the medical industry about keto.
How do folks get in touch with you? How can they keep in touch with you?
I have a Facebook presence. It's called Keto Road Warriors. And I have been coaching people. You're welcome to join the group. All you have to do is request, and we accept into the group. I've been coaching like 300 or 400 people, and many of them now are coaching others as well, and getting everyone on that keto bandwagon.
With that, Paul, we want to thank you for coming on the show this evening.
Sure.
Paul Silva, and we're changing your relationship with food. I'm Cedric Fisher. This is Press Play. Thank you for joining us this evening. You can find this episode of Press Play, Black Video Network, all one word, in your YouTube channel. We'll see you same time next week.